Hi all, let's have a look at another fascinating game from the TCEC Season 17 Premier Division. So this is in round 33. Ethereal was playing with the white pieces against Leela. So Ethereal is written by Andrew Grant, and it has been doing extremely well this season. Okay, let's have a look at the game. And I'll say a little bit more about Ethereal and some stuff at the end of this video. So d4 from Ethereal. The first 8 moves: knight f6, knight f3, e6, c4, b6. We have queen's Indian territory, g3, bishop a6, queen a4. This is one of the best moves here. b3 is an alternative, and for example this has been seen a lot: bishop b4 check with bishop e7 to disrupt the d file. White's thought to have only a small edge. Or knight bd2. Maybe black does a little bit better here. This position, theoretically at least, from an engine perspective, is more than okay for black. So anyway, queen a4 is a bit of a critical test. So stopping the knight moving, putting pressure on the bishop, supporting c4. We have bishop e7. We're still in the book. Knight c3, bishop b7. If black doesn't come back to cover the e4 square, say black castled here, then white can get away with e4 quite comfortably. Very nice position for white. So the bishop comes back to lock down e4 from white. We have bishop g7. Both sides castle. And here d6, and this is the end of the book. d6 is a pretty interesting move. c5 has been seen, it's more common in over-the-board chess. For example, queen d1, perhaps the most solid is d5 here, and this should be only a small edge for white. Another move which has been seen before here is c takes, and this should be quite comfortable actually for white, this position. There's an edge for white. So anyway, d6 was played here. This is the end of the book now, and Ethereal plays queen c2. We have the move c5. So d5 now. The queen is placed quite tactically here. You'll notice it's looking at h7. You'll notice that this is a loose piece, and sometimes there's nasty tactics here involving knight g5 sometimes, which looks at b7 and h7 in some of the variations. So we have e takes, c takes, and now b5. So just to illustrate some of the dangers here mentioned, if knight takes d5, then white plays knight takes, bishop takes, and we still have a loose piece on d5 now, and knight g5 threatens a mate in 1 with queen takes h7, and if bishop takes d5, and this is winning material for white. So some nasty variations are possible here on knight takes. As an alternative, knight bd7 has been seen before in some high-level chess. For example, Van Wely against Pudka in the Paja 2005 saw Van Wely build up a nice position, and eventually he went on to win that game in 47 moves. Grandmaster Van Wely. Okay, so b5 though, interesting move. We see knight takes b5, bishop takes d5. If knight takes d5 here, it seems queen b3 is quite dangerous for black. So for example here, e4, knight takes, and that of course threatens the bishop. So, well, okay, limiting black a little bit. And now rookie, what white should be, it should be actually okay for black. It doesn't seem that bad in particular actually. Knight takes it in that circumstance, but maybe an improvement is just rook d1, leave the queen on c2 for a moment longer. If we get this kind of position, it's a small edge for white. Okay, so we have bishop takes d5. The knight comes back here, bishop b7, and now rook d1. Now knight a6 is played in this position. They say a knight on the rim is dim. Maybe though it's a little bit tricky for black. If d5 knight g5, and this is tricky for black, this position, where there's a double attack on h7 potentially, and d5. So for example, h6, knight takes d5 is possible, and it's horrendous, you know, winning the queen there. Yeah, there's some tricks here on d5. If in this position, if g6, then queen b3 is putting pressure both on b7 and d5. And if here, rook takes d5 is pretty strong. So for example, this position is really strong, because actually there's other tactics here going on which just win material for white. It can be pretty horrendous. Okay, so knight a6, e4, queen c8, at least protecting that bishop now. Knight h4, knight b4. Now, I really like this next move. It's a bit counterintuitive. It's a bit hack attack motivated. Quite often in these variations, the queen's sticking around the queen side, more positional. But this move, guess what white plays here in response to the queen being attacked? Okay. If I give you 5 seconds, 100 points, what would you play here? Okay. Queen d2, actually. It does block in this bishop, and you might have felt, well, what about queen b1? This should be okay as well, actually. Once the knight's kicked, white should have a nice position as well. And if black tries to do something like c4 to perch knight on d3, then actually b3 is going to be more than sufficient for white to be doing well. So anyway, queen d2 is really going for the king, actually. So it's a positional kind of opening, and white seems to want to get the claws around the king, you know, with the knight on f5, the queen on g5 potentially. So that makes it kind of pretty exciting, in my view. So we have rook e8. Is it an abuse of the opening when you start off positioning and then you go for a hack attack? Or vice versa? Vice versa, if you played a hack attack opening and then started playing positioning, it'd be a bit strange, wouldn't it? Maybe. So a3, knight c6, we have knight f5. So it looks as though there's concrete threats emerging. Queen g5, looking at mating, or knight h6 jack, if that pawn's pinned when the queen's on g5. We have bishop f8, and now queen g5. So the threat is actually unveiled here. There's two threats. First of all, the rook is now looking at d6. So knight takes d6. Second of all, knight h6 and knight takes f7 is threatened. This is actually a rather tricky position for black already. Leela tries knight d4. Very interesting try. So if king h8, then just taking on d6 is giving white a big advantage. There's no big compensation for black there. So knight d4, we have now knight h6 jack. Interestingly, if knight takes d4, c takes, rook takes, d5 might be the best try for black. If e takes, then this is very nice. White's getting mated in short order there. And if something more sensible here, like bishop e3, it should be a fairly even position, actually. So this is by far the best move, knight h6 check, and there's a great concept here emerging. Here, knight takes, picking up one pawn, check, and it's not for a perpetual check here. So a key move in this particular position is played. So what would you play here if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video? A very nice tactical move indeed, and positional and logical. Okay, for 200 points. Alright, it's bishop e3, so developing a piece, connecting the rooks. Hello, hello. Putting pressure on d4. Very, very logical move. If instead knight f5, black has a really strong resource here in the form of rook e5, pinning that knight. And for example, f3, rook takes f5, knight takes f3 check, and the white king, the light squares are laid bare for a battery on the bishop retreat with queen c6, and this would be rather devastating stuff, devastating news for white's king safety and loss of material implications. So yeah, this rook e5 would be really, really strong, much better than knight takes f5. This position, white still could have a small edge there, and on knight takes e4, this knight takes e4, knight takes, this could end up being better for black after knight takes g3, a nifty tactic here, looking at the queen. So that's better for black. So there's all these things to which the story is here basically. If knight f5, rook e5 is the strongest though, and it favours black. This really tests black. This move, bishop e3. We have knight b3. This looked wrong to me during the live stream. It looked as though what is going wrong here. It looks as though the black king safety is being compromised here to try and win material. Is there really enough time for black to do this? If the choices aren't great though, if g takes instead, then queen takes creates a weakness of the last move there. Queen takes d6, and say here then this is great for white, big advantage. So knight b3, and white has a brilliant tactical point here. Otherwise black might be getting back in the game. The brilliant tactical point from white, if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video, what would you play here for 400 points? White to play. Okay, the brilliant tactical point, rook takes d6. Yeah, this is really hammering into the black king position. This is real hack attack stuff. Knight takes a1 is played. If bishop takes d6, then check, taking here with tempo on the queen. Rook d1 protecting the knight, and this is just a big advantage for white. This scenario is just winning material. Yeah, what is you know, it's horrible position. And there's also things like taking an e5 to expose an attack on, skewering the rooks. This is totally horrendous. Just taking and then e5, you can see that bishop's going to be skewering the rooks. So horrendous stuff. So rook takes, we have actually knight takes a1. Now check, and now rook takes f6. So yeah, there's these massive pieces around the king, it seems, aggregating. Knight c2 is played. If bishop e7, then actually white has an amazing reply here. Can you guess here? What does white do here? Okay, knight d5 is really strong. If bishop takes, then teasing, but then knight takes, and then the king is too exposed here after knight h5, because for example here, check, the king is being forced out, and the white piece is really coming to life, you know, trying to distract for queen e7. If taking, there's queen e7 checkmate there, just to show you with arrows at least, you can imagine queen e7 checkmate. So this is too much pressure around the king, and or winning material, carnage, destruction, etc. So yeah, knight d5 here is destructive, and if bishop takes, then queen takes, and it's a classic smothered mate scenario, for example, like this. It's not smothered mate, and if queen d7, then bishop h3, and if takes here, knight takes e7, knight h6 check, rook f8 check, queen takes e7. This is winning material for white. This is horrendous, basically. So, for example, here, knight f5, threatening checkmate, and here h3 to get the queen away, or try to bishop f4 is winning material for white. So all these lines, they're pretty bad for black. So yeah, it's quite fascinating after knight d5 there. So knight c2, knight d5. So what does black do? Leela played knight takes e3. Yeah. So yeah, that was on. Sorry, pardon me. That was on bishop e7. Looking at bishop e7, knight d5 is all pretty powerful. But so instead of bishop e7, we have knight c2 being played, trying to get the knight back. But white plays knight d5 anyway. It's a useful move in this position. Knight takes e3 is played here. If bishop takes, queen takes, again we've got the smothered mate tactics on the horizon, and this is just horrendous. Yeah, if black has to give up a rook, it's horrendous. I mean, just to follow that through, if king takes, then there's rook e5 check, and this is a king hunt. It's just checkmating, basically. If knight d4, then e5 is strong, and the bishop can come to e4 here. This mass of pieces around the king really isn't good news for king safety. So for example, like this is the king is or loss of material happens. So in the game, knight takes e3 here, f takes, queen d7. That was tried. If bishop takes d5, it's simply queen takes d5. Again, that's too nasty, that diagonal. So we have so queen d7. We have rook f5. The entrenchment of white isn't going anywhere, it seems. We have bishop e7. If rook ac8, the threat is actually knight f6 check, by the way, winning the queen. So bishop e7 at least parries that for a moment. Queen g4, we have queen e6. If g6 instead, then knight h6 check, knight f4 is strong. So for example, taking there is a mistake because of knight f7 checkmate. And if something more sensible, then white can plough into the king with knight takes g6, queen takes, and here queen h5. And e5, this is horrible for black. It's winning material, and the king is so exposed. There's things like rook g5 coming up. So queen e6 was tried. We have knight c7, queen b3, trying to get, it seems, some perpetual checks or nuisance checks. Knight h6 check, king h8, queen f4. We have g takes, check. And now knight e6 with horrible mate threat. We have black playing bishop f6, Leela playing bishop f6, rook takes. So still threatening now rook f8 check, and then queen g7 checkmate. So Leela tries queen takes e3 check, king h1. And now queen d4, offering the queen basically to try and protect against this mechanism, rook f8, queen g7. It's pretty desperate defense. If queen c1 check instead, then rook f1, and then queen g7 is checkmate. So yeah, queen d4, trying to desperately defend g7 against rook f8, for example. White plays this anyway to unpin that knight so that the knight can take the queen. Now this imbalance here is a bit horrible after bishop h3. It's not about queen takes, but rather to win potentially more material. Bishop c8, check, and the key thing here is black's not got too much counterplay here. We have bishop a6. Taking out this pawn is important, and pushing the e pawn this is going to win further material. So rook takes is played there. Otherwise, the horrible e6, e7 is coming here. So having to give up in exchange, the writing's on the wall here. So that's just winning the bishop as well. It's ouch town for Leela here. So Leela isn't invincible, and it carried on for a bit. Okay, credit where credit's due to Andrew Grant. I asked him a little bit about this. So Andrew Grant, I looked him up on the excellent wiki that TCEC has set up. Andrew Grant, an American computer science and mathematics major at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, author of the UCI-compliant open-source chess engine Ethereal, first officially released in June 2016, and the distributed SPRT framework for chess engines, testing framework for chess engines. So he's been contributing to Stockfish as well, one of the, I believe, an open bench. He said, actually, Alain also needs a mention. He's been working on Ethereal with Andrew Grant and responsible for most of the changes with this version since the last TCEC. Lots of evaluations to do with pawn configuration, closedness of position, and the ability to gain space. So he gave me a link. I've made a short link out of it. If you want to visit Kingscrusher TV /Ethereal GitHub, you'll see a GitHub, some fascinating stuff. It reads very, very well. The codes changes. The stuff about Siberia in there. So, congratulations to his little team defeating the big community project, Leela, on this occasion. And it shows, neural networks still have a long way to go. No one solved chess. So even these amazing new networks of Leela, still lots to learn. And okay, if you want to invite me for a game, I hope you enjoyed it. There's more tactical points. Sorry, hang on a sec. Some philosophical points about this. What would I say about this? I actually like the idea of the opening starting positional, but then it was like a swarm of pieces around the king, going for the hack attack. I kind of like that direct attack from this very positional opening. So it's an interesting way to really put pressure on black when king safety issues are starting to be revealed. I think, Leela's casualness in winning material here, it's just lost a lot of time, all this knight maneuvers and coming back, and it lost a load of time. The white pieces around the king didn't seem to be going anywhere. They instead seem to be picking up material and causing huge issues. So very interesting tactically, I felt. Okay, so if you want to invite me indirectly to a game, use kingscrusher.tv or bit.ly/chessworld, and I'll invite you after you register, pretty shortly after, probably. You can also chat on the Kingscrusher TV/Discord chat channel. That's been livening up. And right now we have the TCEC Super Final underway. So that's Stockfish against Leela. So Leela managed to qualify this season, beating off the competition like the Ali Steen neural network. So it's a great super final, I believe. Quite a fast and furious time control compared to previous TCEC seasons. Well worth checking out on TCEC-chess.com. In fact, I have it running while doing this video. It's kind of very, very exciting tournament, I think, this year especially. Okay. Comments, questions, likes, subscribe to the channel, all appreciated. Thanks so much.